Bear Essentials podcast gives older bears a place to gather for real talk regarding topics and issues that they can relate to. Here at the Bear Essentials, we aren't just having conversations. We are looking to provide actionable intelligence through real-life experience and expertise of our guests. Our mission is to build a strong community that elevates and motivates people to go beyond their limiting beliefs by helping them realize that getting older is not an excuse to hibernate on their goals, but a reason to work harder.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Charles Wallace. Today's guest is helping men over 50 become harder to kill. I know, badass, right? Without further ado, let's jump into my interview with Scott Jagodzinski.
But first, a word from our sponsor. The Bear Essentials podcast is sponsored by Fire Beast Jerky. With flavors ranging from tropical flair to sweet reaper, Fire Beast has something for all jerky lovers. And with over 30 years of experience making small batch, big flavor jerky, Fire Beast is sure to deliver quality, affordable jerky directly to your doorstep anywhere in America. So head on over to firebeastjerky.com and be sure to use code BEAR10 at checkout and receive 10% off your order from Fire Beast, the heat that is sweet. Hey, Scott, how you doing today? Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome to be here, Charles. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure, man. I think the work you're doing is so important, especially for, I'm in that crowd. I'm in that older crowd that I know you're speaking to. And, I've really resonated with a lot of what you're saying. So I figured I'd love to have you on here because I think if it's resonating with me, it will resonate with a lot of the folks who are watching. So that being said, could you give a brief introduction of yourself?
Yeah, you bet. So I'm 58 years old, married for coming up on 36 years. High school sweetheart. It gets better each year. It's her name's Jackie. I've got 3 kids. They're all adults, 2 girls and a boy. And my oldest is married. I've got a grandson named Edwin. He's about 19 months. He's awesome. If you go on my LinkedIn profile, there's a video I have of me doing push-ups with him on my back. Is a way to do fitness with any prop that you have around, including a toddler. It's funny. I didn't start out to be an entrepreneur. I started out in more of a traditional role. I was a CPA working for one of the big 8 firms because that's what my uncle did. And then got an MBA and then was in the corporate world for a while. And just none of that really resonated. I joined a company that was early stage, and that's where I found home. Had some great partners. We grew that thing to, when we sold to a publicly traded ad holding company. And we were doing, $350 million in revenue when it was all said and done. So you didn't realize what was happening until it was all over. When that was done, that was my first time. I call it reinvention. I don't like the word retirement, but I was 40 years old, and then got into a bunch of different things, and then did a turnaround. Was CEO of a company. I was CEO of that company when we sold it. CEO of another company that was a turnaround. Tried to buy it, couldn't get the deal done. It was a tax issue that I didn't want to inherit. That was it, reinvention number 2. And we started a business called Alchemy 365, it's a boutique fitness business that if you think about F45 and Orange Theory, we play in that same space, high intensity interval training type of training. We got to Inc. Number 629 on the Inc. 5000 in 2019. And we're going out for a Series A in early March of 2020. And then the world fell apart. So good news is we didn't die. That which doesn't kill you makes you stronger. and we've come out of that. And during that, I was working part-time doing venture investing for a friend of mine's company. And that got sold. And that was reinvention number 3, because now I was left with, we're in the pandemic. Alchemy is basically, for most purposes, shut down. And so I started thinking about this current thing, which is what I'm doing today, which I started a company called Argent Alpha, which is making men over 50 harder to kill. So that's reinvention number 3. And we can talk about reinvention versus retirement as a topic at some point, but that's where I am today. And that's what led me to meet you in LinkedIn and ultimately to this podcast. So happy. The meandering paths like this are always the most interesting.
Yeah. And I'm glad we have crossed paths because, well, look, I'll be totally frank. And for me, it doesn't take much, right? I saw the name of what you're doing, Harder to Kill. And right away, that's like, oh, that sounds badass. Let me see what this is. And cause, me to look into it. I know that we met, we talked, and I was hooked on what you're doing, because I know for me at least, and some of my story, but in my 40s, I'll say it, I was probably easy to kill, right? I was nothing close to being harder to kill. So it really resonated with me, because it's like, I never thought of it that way. And I think what you're doing is so important to men, and it gives you something to really, it almost brings you down to this, our basic instinct, right? Which is to survive, but to survive in a way which we can thrive. So were you always, Scott, into health and fitness, or was it something that you kind of, were back and forth with?
Yeah, I would say I was a mixed bag. I mean, I've always been into working out when I was younger, playing sports. Most recently, this is probably 10 years ago, I started doing CrossFit. Kind of segued out of that and do a little bit more of traditional strength training now, do alchemy. But I didn't have great nutrition habits. I didn't have really an approach to mindset, which is one of the things we really focus on. I was pretty, I would say I was, compared to the average guy, I'd say had pretty good habits, but I was not Tony Horton, who I know is one of my heroes and one of your former guests. So I would say I wasn't extremely bad, but had a lot of room to improve too.
Yeah. So that being said, I'm glad you brought it up, because you had a post a couple weeks ago, and I've stolen this with family and friends. I've been using it a lot, but you talked about, and I've been doing this, I didn't realize it, and I like the way you described it, but the single ingredient food source.
Oh yeah.
And I thought, you know what? I think people, especially as we get older, we always think about the aspect, oh my God, I got to work out. I got to do this. I got to do that. And I think we really don't pay enough attention to that. And I wanted you to talk about that a little bit, because Scott, I've been doing that more lately, the whole single ingredient food source. And I got to tell you, I've noticed since I've been doing that, my workouts improved, just my general health. So let's talk about the nutrition and that whole single ingredient food source a bit.
Yeah. So I'll give you some context. So we and then I'll dive into the nutrition piece. So we start with, this book is kind of our cornerstone, Be Your Future Self Now. So be your future self. So create that. So let's assume we've covered that. Then we have what we call the Alpha 5, which are 5 standards you set that are going to move you towards that future self: mindset, sleep, nutrition, fitness, hydration. So now we'll go vertical on nutrition. And again, I'm not a nutritionist. I think it's the most overcomplicated thing that people face is what to eat and what's a calorie, what's a macro, keto, vegan. I mean, it's just, the list goes on and on. And so I had this hypothesis. I tested with our group of guys. I said, what if you only ate foods that had one ingredient? What would happen? And with an over index on the protein side, because we put resistance training as the core of our training program. And in order to build muscle mass, you need to train properly, have enough protein, sleep and recover, be properly hydrated. And the reason we do that is that's another one of those things that makes you harder to kill. There's sarcopenia is at work, the natural loss of muscle as you age. And so I've got guys that are, they've been in the program a year and they've added muscle in the last year. So they're creating that delta. So anyways, the hypothesis was single ingredient food. So like a marinated tri-tip from Trader Joe's wouldn't count, because when you look at the ingredients label, there's seed oils in there, there's flavoring, there's all sorts of things. So picture like a grass-fed ribeye off the grill, a sweet potato you baked, and maybe some olive oil, maybe some ghee on there for flavoring. You could steam some broccoli, you could grill some broccoli. And so I put together a sample week and followed this, and I was able to hit my protein goal, which is what we target is ideal body weight in grams of protein. So I'm roughly at my ideal body weight at about 195. So I'm trying to get 195 grams of protein per day. And so that's roughly just called 50 grams per meal if I have 4 meals. And then I fill in with everything else. And my hypothesis was, I think you can hit your protein goal, be in a caloric deficit, which most guys need to be in to start doing some body recomposition, and have a fully, have an awesome meal, have plenty of vitamins, nutrients, minerals, etc. And everybody who did it said it wasn't as hard as they thought. It was actually easy. It's just a shift in mindset. And they hit their protein goal, but it was a real challenge to overeat on it. You almost couldn't overeat on it. You try getting to 3,000 calories on single ingredient foods. You have to really be intentional about it and eat a lot of like probably protein that's high in fat. So like a ribeye, wild caught salmon, that sort of thing. And so it's not conducive to, if guys travel, you got to do your best and just try to, what I tell the guys in our group is don't even look at menus. Just tell the server what you want. Grilled chicken, give me 2 grilled chicken breasts, a side of this, a side of that. Don't even look at the menus. And almost, I think I've had 100% compliance from these servers. They look at you kind of funny, and then they get you what you want. So yeah, so we call it SIFT, single ingredient food trial. Like just give it a try, see what you think. And I'm sure somebody out there listening is going to say like, oh, you're going to be under this or under that. It's okay. Go look at the standard American diet. If you think that's going to make you healthier, I don't think this is a risky diet. I think it's actually what America needs right now is less bad calories, more good calories. So yeah, that's kind of how we landed on it. So we've got guys experimenting with it, try it. They'll, a lot of times I'll just do like 1 or 2 meals a day like that, just because it's just sometimes not, you're not preparing every meal yourself. Or like our kids were down this weekend, and although they kind of eat this way at home, my oldest does with our grandson. So it's an easy thing to remember, and it also forces guys to start looking at labels, to start seeing what's in their food.
Yeah. And Scott, I've been kind of doing it, but not, like I said, like when my wife and I really started our journey back to our health and fitness, one of the big things we relied on was shopping the edges of the supermarket. Like we would rarely venture down those middle aisles, and it was, get our meats, our proteins, our vegetables, things like that. And it definitely helped a lot. And I know when I saw your post, I was like, yeah, you know what? It's an easier way to kind of remember it. And honestly, I think it adds a little more accountability to it. And you're focused on making sure, at least as close as you can, to keeping it to, food in its natural state. You want your steak to be steak, your chicken to be chicken, your veggies to be veggies. So I think that's fantastic. Yeah. So I also like the whole pyramid thing you talked about. I think it's a pyramid that's actually good for us, because that damn food pyramid that they came back up with in like the 50s, I think that's like killing Americans at this point. So we talked a little bit about the nutrition, and I'm sorry I know I probably went out of order, but I guess for me, the next thing would be, let's talk about, we went nutrition. Let's go with hydration. How important is the hydration, along with eating your right food? How much, water, what you're drinking, things like that?
Yeah, it's funny. So when I tell guys about the Alpha 5, they're head nodding through the first 4. And then when I get the hydration, they're like, hydration, that's too easy. Why the focus? So, well, try it. Get back to me in about 3 days after you follow the guidance. And the guidance is a minimum of half your body weight in ounces per day. So that's kind of the starting point. So if you're a 200-pound guy, you're drinking 100 ounces. And one guy joked like it because he felt like he'd been waterboarded. This is what he felt like with drinking that much water. So if you Google it, you'll find out there's a lot of different studies that will show 50% of America, 75% of America are chronically dehydrated. People just don't drink enough water. And no, coffee doesn't count, juice doesn't count, soda doesn't count, beer doesn't count. It's like pure H2O. And then, so when guys capture that, then I think the next level is, okay, if you're working out, bump that up. So that same 200-pound guy, 100 ounces, just round it up to a gallon, and then add some electrolytes. And you can add electrolytes as simply as some Himalayan pink sea salt. You can make your own with some, I think it's potassium chloride, if I remember right. Don't quote me on that. I've got a little ingredient list I follow. But I like a couple companies. One's called, it's pronounced Element, LMNT. Super good product. There's a guy there. What's his name again? He's a paleo guy. I'm blanking on his name right now. Another one I like is what's it called again? Relight, I think it is. But anyway, just go on Amazon, find one that has good ratings. It's a game changer on your workouts, man. When you're fully hydrated and you have electrolytes, there's something that you'll get more reps. If you're doing progressive overload with your lifting, for example, it's just going to boost your numbers a lot. So. And then, we have this is a I'm drinking right now. This is actually coffee, but I've got 2 mugs, a coffee mug and a 40-ounce bottle. So I drink 3 of those 40-ounce bottles. Don't try to keep track of the math. It's too hard. Get something with fixed ounces. 3, like a lot of our guys have 25 ounces. They'll drink 4 or 5 of those a day. Just make it easy. And try. Yeah, I tell guys too, try to avoid bottled water and plastic. There's something about BPAs and all that stuff. Just if you can avoid it, don't sweat it if you can't, but just get the water intake done and start early. Don't be down in water at 8 at night. I mean, it's like surefire way to get up at 1 in the morning and head to the John is drink too much water late. So hit it early, phase it down at the end of the evening. Yeah.
And Scott, I definitely that was a part that I definitely was not really aware of. And I got on my kick about being hydrated when I did 75 hard, because part of 75 hard was we had to drink a gallon of water daily. But I could tell that drinking that water, it helped everything. And I found out the hard way. I had to make my cutoff around 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. Otherwise I was done. And I would be waking up at night. So, all right. So we got the nutrition, the hydration. You know what? I want to let you pick. What do you think's the next best one to touch in the order that I kind of got going here?
Yeah, I would say mindset, because I think everything else becomes more clear and I won't say easy, but it does eventually become easier once you get your mind right. So yeah, let's chat about mindset.
So I'm definitely big on the whole mindset thing, as you can probably tell from some of the things I post. I think I've found now that even when I look back now, I think part of my journey was more about having a weak mindset and an unhealthy mindset more than it was physical, because I found out now, once I changed my mindset, and I think it'll be like this for a lot of people, once the mindset changed and became more positive and it was stronger, my body was able to do more. And even when it probably wasn't, I was maybe weaker in the body, my mind was able to carry me through. So what are your principles of mindset on the program that you kind of talk people through, teach them?
Yes. It's funny. So when I'm posting on LinkedIn and I get, inbound stuff from guys, messages, some guys who know me will text me. I only get contacted by men who have a growth mindset. If they don't have a growth mindset, they're not even bothering trying to contact me, because they just don't believe they don't believe they can do it, or they think it's BS. So it starts with a limiting belief with those guys. The guys who are curious, it's either something about the harder to kill. There's something missing from their pride, pride in their body or their health or their performance. There's something, they know there's a better way, they just aren't sure. And so I think of it as a continuum. I think I get men who are neutral plus to totally positive, anything can happen kind of guys. The guys who are on that end of the spectrum just come in and crush it. I mean, they just do. And I kind of liken it to getting on the highway. Just get on the highway. You can go 100 miles per hour or faster like the Autobahn, or you can go 5 miles per hour. But as long as you're on the highway, it doesn't matter. We're not in a race. We're not competing. And so that's part of it, is just, I'd say, for anyone, growth mindset, the belief that you can learn things and you can improve and you can get better. Then we use this Future Self book by Benjamin Hardy. And I've been in his Accelerated Momentum program, his coaching program, for about 4 years now. And he's awesome. I mean, he partners with Dan Sullivan, founder of Strategic Coach. And Ben Hardy is just an awesome coach. And this book helps you basically, you have a default setting for your future self. You're becoming someone. And modern life has made most of us that default setting is not necessarily our optimal self. It's probably the exact opposite. And so being very intentional about who you want to become and then adopting the habits and behaviors of that person is key. So, and I kind of mesh it with James Clear's identity-based habits. So basically, what results do you want? Like, identify someone who has those results and just start doing what they're doing. So model those behaviors. And it's crazy how well it works. And I would joke when I did this a couple of years ago, when I did my future self and outlined it in vivid detail, and then I did my current self, and then I did this gap analysis. So as a side thing, I use a lot of business principles and just apply them to our personal lives. We can come back to that. But, I looked at the gap and I thought, well, future Scott doesn't drink 2 or 3 hazy IPAs every night with a bag of pretzels. It's like, that's not going to cut it. And so drinking cuts down dramatically. Food choices cut down dramatically. So it almost starts with a subtraction versus an addition to your habits. Like, stop doing bad stuff. is probably step number one for most of us. And then as you capture that as a habit, start doing some better things. So this doesn't have to be complicated. Like for fitness, it could be just start walking. You don't have to get into a strength training program right away. But if you want to, like, how about some push-ups? How about some wall sits? How about some lunges? You can start really simple. But again, most guys come in like chomping at the bit, and when they're ready to go, they just want to go. And so some of these guys, you got to pull back a little bit. But I love working with both because, again, the main thing is just get your car on the highway, and then keep going. So that's mindset. And then how we do it every day. The Alpha 5 is about those 5 areas and creating standards in those areas. So think about it. When you think about raising your ceiling, they talk about with this athletes all the time versus raising your floor. Well, you're standing on your floor. You're very familiar with it. So raising your floor is a lot easier than raising your ceiling, an area you haven't been, that's out of your grasp, that you may never get to possibly. So you're kind of always in the gap versus here you're always in the gain. So it's like, hey, I looked at my watch or my phone. I've walked an average of 5,000 steps for the last year. I mean, you can look all this stuff up on your phone. How about if I bump it up to 5,500? You can measure it like you just raised your floor. What if I ate one less bad thing in a day? What if I had one less cup of coffee? So all these things are measurable. So our guys, I call it the RAD process, recurring accountability drivers. And so they score themselves on the Alpha 5. They set their standard. So your standard would be different from my standard, from John's standard. And you score yourself each day. So that's a daily accountability. You report your score into the group every week on Sunday. So 7 days, 5 criteria or standards, and it's binary, 1 or 0 is how you score yourself. So the most you can get is 35 out of 35.
Okay.
And so we have guys call their shot, like, hey, Charles, what are you going to get this week? Busy week of travel, this, that, and the other thing. I'm going to get 32 out of 35. Awesome. And then you start each day. This is part of the mindset. The morning routine is, what are you going to get today? So it's asking yourself that question, and then you go do it. And then we have a Monday morning Zoom call, and guys will then go into what they scored, what's the win, what are they focusing on this week. And so it's just, it becomes this thing where once you capture it, it's like, okay, it's a habit now. Now raise your standard. So if 10,000 steps is nothing, maybe it's 15,000 steps. Maybe it's a new workout program. Maybe it's some other challenge. But the idea is, don't get too far ahead of yourself. It's like we're week after week consistently going after these things. Raising the floor will create dramatic results. And to give you one example, one of our guys, his name's Tom, in 6 months, he went from, I'll give you the net numbers, 23 pounds of fat loss, 0 muscle mass loss. And most people, when they lose that kind of weight, they're not tracking their body composition, and they're not eating necessarily 100% the right way to avoid losing muscle. They'll lose muscle and fat. And what that ends up doing is lowering your resting metabolic rate. And so now your metabolism's dropped, so you have to actually eat less to not gain weight again. And this is why things like The Biggest Losers, they all rebound back because they've just messed up their metabolism. So the mindset thing, in between setting your future self, having these standards in 5 areas, measuring yourself every day, is kind of key. And then within that, I recommend doing a morning routine. It can be 2 minutes or 20 minutes, or as long as you want it, but set the intention for the day, set your top priorities. And don't start a day until you've lived it once on paper, is, I think, a Jim Rohn quote. And I love that line, like, you plan your day out how you want it to be. And we all know there's curveballs. It's never going to go 100% the plan, but you'll get the stuff done that's important to you. If you've written it down and looked at yourself, and you have some personal integrity and keep promises to yourself, stuff's going to happen, or it's more likely to happen. So yeah, that's kind of our approach on mindset. And now I just had a call with a guy yesterday, a really interesting guy, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about mental health. And we were talking about mental health has kind of been defined in this. It's like an issue versus like when we talk about physical fitness, it's different. Physical health has this broader connotation than mental health. And I think it shouldn't have a negative sort of association with it. Mental health is like, oh, something's wrong. So why can't the default be something's right? And then it's more broad. But that's kind of one of those roadmap items for us to look at, is mental health and also cognitive health. So just as we age, how do we keep physically sharp, mentally sharp as we age, and just not have any drop off?
Yeah, I that's something I'm actually just starting to get really interested in too, Scott. I've been trying to look a lot more. I mean, as you know, I have a lot of guests on here that mental health is the topic. And unfortunately, it's usually in a negative context that they've experienced something really negative. They've rebound, but I really like where you're going. And I would be interested also myself personally to see where you go with that, because I mean, I think I've noticed for me that the more I focused on my mindset and then the other habits of my physical health, the way I ate, the way I slept, the way I hydrated, it just, my mental health was just better because of that. I noticed that I just feel better. But yeah, I think that's really valuable area that you guys are going to start to go a little deeper in. And I'm already asking, once you do start to get into that, we'll plan to have you on here again, because I would like to really talk about that even more. I love to see where that goes. One of the other parts of your pyramid that I know I was extremely guilty of was the rest and recovery, right? Like what are you recommending to your guys? Because I know at my worst, I may have been getting 4 to 5 hours a night. And that was after staying up till 1, 2 in the morning with the TV on, scrolling on my phone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So sleep comes right after mindset. And I think sleep is one of those, it's still, as much press as it's gotten, it's still underrated. Well, first of all, I'll back up with some stats. So about 75% of men, and I think this is basically adult men, but I've looked at men over 50, are either overweight or obese. 75%. By the end of the decade, it's going to be 80%. Some states, obesity rates are going to be over 40%. I mean, it's crazy. And so when you're obese, you're in a state of insulin resistance, and everything is like this downward spiral. And you just getting great sleep when you're insulin resistant and all those things are just not lined up is almost impossible. So if that's not right, there's no way you're going to have the motivation or the energy to work out like you could. And you have this kind of, screw it mindset. So you tend to eat like that. And you have a little bit of the, I'll start on Monday, and you never start on Monday. And so that's why we focus on all 5 and say, you don't have to win on all 5, but if you start making progress on all 5, you're going to feel a difference. And so the first thing we start with is like, you got to have a sleep strategy. And guys say, well, what's a sleep strategy? Okay, well, like anything, what's the outcome you're seeking? Well, I want to feel rested and, recovered. Okay, awesome. So that's how do we do that? And we'll give them some guidelines. Like 1, start with the basics: consistent bedtime and consistent wake up times. I'm up at between 5 and 5:30 Monday through Sunday. It doesn't matter. The weekends and weekdays are the same thing to me. I don't stay up late. It's almost gotten to a point my wife and I will like stress out if we have a dinner party that we're going to be out past 9. It's like we got to like work on that part because it gets us out of our routine. But so have a sleep strategy, consistent bedtimes. I like, and I've heard guys like Dan Go talk about this, other experts in this field. Stop the caffeine about 8 to 10 hours before you go to bed. Mm-hmm. Stop eating 3 hours before you go to bed. And my hack on that one is eat dinner. Say, we eat at like 5:30. Brush and floss right after you eat, and you will not snack, or you're less likely to snack because nobody wants to brush and floss twice. So stop eating 3 hours before bedtime. 2 hours before bedtime, stop drinking water. Just means sips to like if you're going to take a supplement or something. 1 hour before bedtime, stop all screens, TV, iPads, iPhones, etc. And I do an evening routine. I usually do it right before or right after dinner, just so I don't forget. And what I like about that is it helps clear my mind. So it's like, we call it a victory lap. What are the wins for the day? What went right? What could have gone a little bit better? Plan out really loosely what your day is going to be like tomorrow. And then just mind dump. If you just got stuff in if your brain's racing, just write it down. Just like emptying your brain. And then you just kind of ease into that sleep strategy that you're implementing with a little more calm. You're sympathetic, you're parasympathetic, I get those two mixed up, but you're just calm down. You're kind of ready for sleep. And so those are kind of the basics. And then a cold, dark room. We get ours at about 60 degrees right now. We're in Phoenix right now. We're doing 6 and 6 in Minnesota and in Arizona. A lot easier to be at 60 in Minnesota this time of year. But Phoenix is pretty easy right now too. So cool room. I know this sounds funny, and you probably watched Gilligan's Island as a kid. So get an eye mask like Mrs. Howell wore. It just like it blocks out all the light, and unless you have room darkening curtains, but get it dark in there. I like a little ambient sound at night, like thunderstorms or fire. I mean, we still have this primal instinct where we you think about generations for thousands of years, we're sleeping by fires at night. So there's something about fire that helps with sleep. And if you've got an Amazon Echo or something like that in your bedroom, you can find a skill and play it. And then I like to take 400 milligrams of magnesium glycinate before bedtime.
Okay.
Some guys, I like melatonin. Some guys like Huberman say he's not a melatonin fan. I'd say experiment with it, see if it works for you. Start with a really low dosage, like I think 300 micrograms is a place to start, and you can go up from there. And I wear an Oura ring, and that's where I get my data. And it's funny. There is this, I think it's called the Hawthorne effect, when the act of observing something will influence the outcome just by looking at it. So by looking at all my sleep data, I've tripled my deep sleep in 2 years of wearing the Oura ring. And I've done a lot of adjustments, cut back on alcohol, scaled back the eating before bed. That's a huge one. My resting heart rate, if I've had alcohol, will be 10 beats per minute higher throughout the night. It's like an additional 5,000 beats in a night. So think of your heart like a tire. It's like putting on 5,000 more miles in one night. It's not a good thing. So that's where we start. And then what I like about the tech, if you're not stressed out about it, some people will obsess about the tech and they'll start like, I gotta fall asleep, and their score will stress them out. I just look at it as data. It doesn't stress me out. It's feedback to make adjustments. So that's kind of in a nutshell what we at least what we start with sleep. And I think as you lose body fat and you get below 20% body fat, I think this is my hypothesis. I think a lot of these CPAP machines that are prescribed are a function of having too much weight on you. You get rid of the weight, sleep is just going to get better. You still might need one. I don't know. Follow the advice of your doctor, all that. I always joke about that though. Most of these docs don't know jack about fitness, nutrition. So if you go to your doctor, hey doc, can I do this fitness? Can I do CrossFit? They'd go, well, you might get hurt. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. This whole consult your physician is a cover your ass move that people have. Anyway, I suppose I'll probably end up doing the same thing for risk mitigation, but it's like, talk to a bunch of people, build your team of advisors on health, and get good, varied advice from people and go that route. But no one doctor, unless you got an awesome doctor, is going to have all the answers.
Yeah. And Scott, when you said that, I just had to chuckle because, and I just, a mutual friend of ours, I did his podcast recently, Rubio. And I told the story when I saw the cardiologist and they asked me to wear a heart monitor. Mm-hmm. And, I didn't think anything of it. I jumped all into my workouts, and I got a phone call that, they were seeing some very irregular data regarding my heart. It was up to like 182 beats per minute, and they thought something was wrong. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm working out. And they said, oh, we didn't mean that. We meant walk or jog. I'm like, oh, well, didn't kill me, so I guess I'm all right, So it was just funny that you mentioned that, because I remember that phone call vividly from the nurse, and they literally thought something was wrong.
I believe it. Yeah, hey, that reminds you one quick comment on that, Charles. So I've had a few guys ask me or they'll say when we talk about training, hey, I don't want to get hurt. And I'll say like, yeah, I don't either. Mm-hmm. But there's risk in everything, right? These are all business guys. Like you incur risk to get a reward. Mm-hmm. So you have to ask yourself, is the risk of doing nothing, being sedentary, is that greater or less than the risk of trying to get in better shape and stronger and improve your range of motion and all those things? And so they both are fraught with risk, right? But we can manage them both. And I think that's it. The risk of inaction oftentimes is much higher than the risk of the action you're taking. Yet people get paralyzed by that. Well, I don't want to get hurt. It's like it's just another procrastination technique is what it ends up being.
Totally agree with that, Scott, because, and I think it goes a little back to mindset too. I know before, any type of injury or soreness was a reason that I would choose not to work out. It was an excuse not to work out. Now, if I have something that's maybe slightly injured or sore, I'll work with my trainer to avoid that area, but it won't stop me from working out. I'll still work out. I'll just focus on something else to lessen that area that might be injured or hurt or sore at some point. But yeah, I think everything you're saying is it's so valuable. And And I think you've really put it all together well in a really easy to follow format that, men can really gravitate to, and it gives them something to strive for, Did we touch on all the pyramid, or is there one more? I think.
Maybe we should talk about fitness a little bit, because I think that's
Yeah.
I think it's where guys tend to want to go 1st.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you guys, Argent Alpha isn't a fitness program. We have a fitness program. It's really more about this broader concept of harder to kill, which really is, how do we age how do we improve our quality of life? Peter Attia calls it health span.
Mm-hmm.
So we have great years and preferably more of them, so that you're 100 years old, fully functional, you die disease free in your sleep. That'd be like, just like this, off a cliff, right? Not this slow decline. So anyways, our point of view on training is, you got to strength train as you get older. It's you got to be stronger. You want to be looking at mobility and range of motion so that you move well. And so we really like Peter Attia's 4 pillars of fitness for longevity. So stability, strength, zone 2 cardio, and zone 5 cardio. Zone 2 is kind of, think of it as low intensity steady state or list training. And zone 5 is like HIIT or interval or Tabata. It's the high intensity stuff, short duration. And so I work with a guy named Brock Harling, and he owns a CrossFit gym in Minneapolis. He's been doing this for 10 plus years. He's huge on mobility, and he just does a great job. So we work together. I'm the guinea pig. So I'm the man over 50 with bone on bone in my right knee. And it's like, we don't do Olympic lifting. We don't do anything below 5 reps, no 1 rep maxes. And we focus on, really, you got to move right in order to get as strong as you should be. Mm-hmm. You got to strength train. So I've had guys come in and their results stall on the body comp. And some of these guys, they're biking 25, 30, and they're like awesome bikers. They're like hitting the miles, but that doesn't do hardly anything for body composition. It's not a calorie burned issue. You need to build muscle mass. And, I call it chronic cardio. I stole that from Mark Sisson. When you're just chronically doing cardio because you love it or you think it's the answer,
right? You
got to strength train. So, and that doesn't mean you're going to turn in, you're not going to get bulky. Trust me. It's like, you need to be on steroids and 2 or 3 hours of training to get quote unquote bulky. So, having a resistance training program, that could start off with just body weight movements, and then you just move your way up from there. But, and I like to call it, training, and we're athletes, because I think it's a story we tell ourselves. We're not working out, we're training to achieve a specific outcome. And that means the methods we use need to be specific to help us get there. And then we measure a lot of things to give us a feedback loop, so we know if we're on track or not. And I love the idea of calling ourselves athletes, because, we're setting goals, we're pushing boundaries, we're achieving new things. We're not really competing, but there's a little bit of like this, I call it the virtual locker room and virtual towel snapping. We measure certain things. We've got our 6 standards we test every month. And so, guys like to know where they stand relative to other guys. And it's not really about necessarily beating someone. It's knowing where you stand and because that helps you get better. Because if I know you're doing 50 hand release push-ups and I'm only at 40, I'm going to work harder. It's just the name of the game. So that's kind of in a nutshell, our view on training.
I mean, I think, again, like your whole program, Scott, I think it's solid. And, I think obviously, especially as we get older, I think there was that misconception that, people were always so focused when they got older on just cardio and their heart and all that good stuff. But I know I'm in 100% agreement with you. Like when I started strength training on a regular basis, my life improved dramatically. So for everyone who isn't, I take it from Scott, you definitely should be. So Scott, I mean, you got a lot of information that we went through. I just want to give you a quick shot here too. How can people get a hold of you online, social media, if they want to reach out and maybe explore your programs in a little more detail?
Yeah, so our website, argentalpha.com, ARGENT alpha.com. Check that out. You can get a hold of me there. I'm pretty much exclusive to LinkedIn right now. I dabble a little bit sometimes in Instagram, but if you go to LinkedIn, and I've got a last name where you'll find me pretty quickly. There's a few of us out there, but if you put in Scott Jagodzinski, Argent Alpha, you'll find me on LinkedIn. And I'm posting there pretty much daily. We put out a weekly newsletter. It's one tip a week on how to get harder to kill. If you read through my newsletters, I mean, you could, it's like any of these newsletters. You just follow that, like James Clear. You don't have to buy Atomic Habits. You can just read all his blog posts. It's the same kind of thing. There's a ton of content. I think the magic of our group is when the group comes together, it's the community part of it. There's this band of brothers aspect to it. So, but I think I love helping guys. So I can't tell you how many women contact me too. Hey, I love your posts. I've been doing this stuff. So these things I'm targeting men, and a lot of them, the stuff we do is male specific. But a lot of these things apply to any gender or age. Having an approach to how you think of the world in a positive, how it might be, how you could learn from it, how you could perform better. Like who wouldn't benefit from that? It's all about possibilities. So, but yeah, LinkedIn, my website, and and it's like, just reach out. info@argentalpha.com is a good email to reach me at. And I'll respond to anybody who takes time to contact me.
Awesome, Scott. Well, I really appreciate you doing this. I think it's going to help a lot of people, and I hope people take advantage. Listen to the great information that you put out today, and then go a little further and maybe reach out and get in touch with you. So thank you. And I want to thank everybody for listening and watching today. I really appreciate it. Again, thank you, Scott. You take care.
Thanks, Charles. Have a good day. Take care.
This has been the Bear Essentials. Thanks for listening. And remember, never hibernate on your goals.